Okay, so good evening, everybody. My name, I don't know if the people were going to respond, but my name is Janet Riney, and I'm here in conversation with Jenny Kennard and with all of you, looking at the essence of relationships. I've started these series of webinars because I suppose since I've been around the principles, only 5 or 6 years in the UK, I can see more and more people talking about how can they take this into business, how can they do this, how do they start conversations, and there's lots of how-to conversations going on. And I suppose what's been resonating with me over the last year to 18 months is we're looking in the wrong direction if we're thinking, okay, we're just about teaching this, but it's more about recognizing and understanding that this is what we are. It's the being of these principles. And so in having these conversations, it's about having conversations with friends who we've been having these types of conversations for the past 18 months, but rather than having them late night in secret and even in some cases bemoaning why things have changed, turned into the things that they have, just thought, well, why not share? Why not start talking about this, sharing what we're seeing, pointing people back to the foundation, the nature of it, who and what we are. So tonight, I'm really honoured and pleased and blessed to have my friend Jenny Kennard here, who has been a friend, a mentor and teacher over the years. She really has. And we looked at the essence of relationships, because I suppose in some part Jen and I are taking a similar journey at the moment personally, but also just pointing back to the heart and the true heart and nature of who and what we are, because fundamentally that's at the heart of everything that we are and that we do. So if I could ask, everybody's so used to webinars, everybody's muted themselves. Crystal, I'm just going to mute you, if that's okay. I'm going to mute you. So whilst Jen and I are speaking, just to be muted. Then if anybody has a question or anything, just indicate, let me know, or type something in the chat. Because I really want these to be conversations. I don't want it just to be us two, quick Q&A and then a space for, a discussion between the two of us and Q&A at the end. I want there to be, if you've got a question or you want something to clarify or be part of the conversation, just indicate, put a question in the chat, or just unmute yourselves and just be part of the conversation. So I'd invite you to be part of that. But to start off with, I think if people, not everybody may know Jenny Kennard, I'm not sure. I'm making an assumption that, I could make an assumption that everybody does. But what I would say, Jen, just to start off really, is just a brief introduction about yourself, how you found out about the principles, and why you're here now, how you happen to be here now.
Cool. Thank you for asking me, Janet. I think it's great you're doing all of these. And I know this is born from so many conversations that you've been having with people. But for me, it's, I love the ever-changing nature of how I see this. So I came to the three principles, it's just over 11 years ago now. And I came at it at a time when I was struggling a lot with anxiety and depression, eating disorders, and a huge amount of worry about life, and very, very limited in terms of the potential possibility I thought I had as a human being. And I came to it through a guy called Dr. Roger Mills, and it was amazing because it was a 3-day training that I couldn't even afford. It took me a year to pay back that 3-day training. And I wasn't really going in expecting too much. But what I heard completely changed me. So I went in thinking I was one person, and I came out feeling like a different person. And I can look back now and think I'm completely different to the person that walked out then, and what I understood then seems like nothing. But in so many ways, it's the same insight I've been having over and over and over again, where experience is coming from. And I love that logic, and I love the 100% nature of it. But I feel like in recent months, years, I've got really, really interested again in looking to what's creating that, into the formless nature of these principles. Because I know that having a language and seeing thought created feeling in the moment is really, really powerful. And it's completely, like, that insight over and over again is changing people. But I love looking now to what is it that is creating all life? What is it that's creating insight? What is it creating? What's creating? And more I'm drawn to that. More and more I'm drawn to listening to some of Sid's old tapes and listening. Again, it's beyond his words, because so much of what he speaks about doesn't make sense to our logical mind. But there's some certainty in him that I kind of feel like I hear, which I heard on that first course from Roger, in that within all of us there is the capacity for all experience, but also that as our thinking clears, we find ourselves in a more peaceful space. And I love that it's not a doing or a trying. It's something completely impersonal and true for everyone. And I love how the evolution of this is different for everyone, and that time doesn't matter. Like, someone could have been around it 5 minutes and seen something so deeply that I can't understand what they're talking about anymore. And that it really isn't a time thing. There is no experts. I loved how you introduced us as friends, colleagues, mentors, because to me that's what everyone in this community and people I meet every day are. Well, we're all learning from each other. There is no experts in life. And I love and respect so much Sydney Banks' life work, that he spent his life trying to point us to this. And I know many people have joked that he spent his whole life saying, no, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. Because as human beings, we try and make it into something. So I think more and more I'm realising what I make up about the principles isn't what the principles are pointing to. But it's still kind of fun to do, and it's fun to have these kind of conversations and get questions and hear how are people seeing this, what's showing up for people, and seeing in people where they already have noticed this in their lives, seeing more and more that this is who we are. Principles is a description of who we are before we even knew the words of the principles. So it's not that these principles give us anything or say anything about us that isn't already true. It's pre-existing. And I think that's something that more and more draws me back to. Everyone already has this within them, and we've just forgotten. So our job or our role as a facilitator gets less and less and less, and it's more drawing out from people. And I think in some ways just turning people back round and saying it's within. And that's been spoken about throughout time. But the way that Sid described the principles as foundational and fundamental, I don't think I've ever heard in that way before. And I know that I've loved having that as my foundation to be able to then listen to all different kinds of teachers. Whereas I know before I used to get caught up in how teachers spoke about it and their ideas and their concepts. Whereas I feel like seeing the simplicity of the principles opens us up to hearing truth all around. It's the simplicity of it, I think, which I love. And I think I get less and less interested in talking about where I've come from in terms of the content of my story, because that used to be such a big thing for me. And I still do talk about it, but more and more, so what's fresh now? Where you see now? And I found that a lot with the conversations I had with you, Jan, just like hearing how you've changed in the 6 years that I've known you.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful, Jen, and it's true, because like you, having gone through One Thought, worked with Jamie, been to Salt Spring, just listening to lots of different people and how they express these principles, what the principles are pointing towards. I suppose in the last 18 months, what I started to question that for myself. I think last year, I can vividly remember last year, just like, hang on a second, Sydney Banks is the one that had the insight, right? And so then everybody else is doing the best they can to express this. So there isn't any right or wrong. Everybody's doing the best they can. So I can express this the best way I can, and it doesn't have to sound like anybody else, because there isn't anybody that expresses it like me, because nobody has my thoughts. Nobody is me. And so that started a real journey of just kind of expletive this, let me just do what I want to do. And as Jen said, it's just the freedom of that, in knowing that. And I love what you said, Jen, we're looking at what this is. You mentioned that a couple of times, what this is, that we are this, or what it is, or whatever. And part of me wants to say, well, what do you see that as? Now, what is the it? What is the this? What's that you're seeing? Sorry, I'm just like that. I don't know how deep it's going to go, people. So I just kind of...
I think it's more, in some ways, it's more what it's not. So it's not anything I'm creating through thought. I'm not my thoughts. No one are, anything running through our head, it's not that. And I guess similar to what Sid was saying to us when we were trying to share it, no, it's not that. It's not that. I feel like it's more and more like just thoughts and ideas about myself that I thought to be true are becoming visible and falling away. Invisible thinking that we all live out of either becomes visible and we get to have a kind of a different look at it, or it falls away without us noticing. And like when Sid spoke about consciousness, more and more I'm starting to realise is that when I spoke about it, I was talking about our consciousness, what we're personally aware of. And I know that what he was pointing to is consciousness as a principle, as one consciousness. And I know that Rudy used to describe it as consciousness with different eyes. And more I'm just seeing that we are potential. This infinite potential for new experience in any moment, regardless of circumstance or the past. And I think seeing that means we're not limited to anything we've thought before. So I feel like you get to sit more and more in that seat of potential and possibility. Because before that, I had such a fixed identity, such a fixed version of myself, and also fixed versions of other people. I know who my parents are, I know what my sister's like. And I think last December I had another experience where it felt like a shedding of, my goodness, I came across the principles and dropped a load of thinking about who I was. And then I recreated some other version that was nicer and worked better in the world. But it was still a version, and I attached to it and almost limited myself. And it was that feeling, you feel less free through that. And I feel like the possibility of these principles is the ultimate freedom to be an expression of life in all of its multicolours. And I love that about it. And I think I thought that I was truer to myself with the version I had made up, because that was a nicer one. I think me and Lily were talking about it at the conference. It was a prettier looking life, prettier looking version, but it was still a version. And I think I still was identifying as being truer to me and who I was. And now it's like, that's a character. It's a character I made up and I lived out of as if it was a real life person. And now I feel like we get to just change character as if we change clothes at the same frequency. And I kind of love that it hasn't been through effort or trying. Like insight and change and movement doesn't seem to be on our agenda. If I could have more insight and see things quicker, then I would. So it seems that there's an intelligence to life which is living us. And I don't think I have as much say in it all as I used to.
Sorry.
Did you just get that sign as well?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why that is, because it shouldn't be that. But sorry. Bear with me. Okay. Forgive me. I think I've got a few logistics on here that I'm going to have to deal with. I was going to say, I think that's really, it's interesting that earlier this year, Jen, that I had a similar experience where what came to me, the question that came to me in going through this was, what if I was not the Janet that I thought I was? What would I do then? And in asking that question, that allowed me to then go on the Camino with Linda Ramus and with 2 outfits and backpack, and go down to Brighton and hang out there for a while and not know which contract I would come back to, and do these webinars without it being part of a funnel or a plan or any, something like that. And just constantly challenging the thoughts that I'm having, like you said, about the thoughts I'm having about myself, what I'm having about others, what I'm having about life. So, it's recognizing that I am all of this. Okay, I'm going to ask somebody to ask a question, or for Jen to talk, so I can deal with the financy part over here.
Got 8 minutes.
Okay, it's coming up. So does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? No. Okay. Jen, keep talking, please.
Like, when I was thinking about this topic today, I just thought, fundamentally, we're only ever having a relationship with our own thinking. So our own thinking about ourselves, our own thinking about a person. And that's the thing that seems to change with these principles, is our relationship to thought. And I don't know, I think I'm constantly surprised at what life brings. I'm constantly humbled by how caught up in my own thinking I can get. And there's more and more certainty that I'm all right even in that. I'm all right even in anxiety, even in worry, even in shyness. Like, it was brilliant for me at the beginning of the year for having about 6 or 7 weeks of a lot of anxiety and not being able to sleep. How many people have I spoken to who can't sleep? I'm like, well, there's these principles and thought creates feeling, and as you settle down. I was like, but there's no use knowing that intellectually in the moment when you can't sleep. You just can't sleep. What I loved is that it didn't become such a problem that I couldn't sleep. I maybe did less in the daytime. I found things, I got into knitting, so I was knitting quite a lot late at night. And I think there's a way in which we get to see all experiences a bit more neutrally. That I'm less and less drawn to needing to have a certain type of experience to think I'm doing all right. I'm less and less needing to be anything other than what's here in this moment. And I think for such a long time, I still thought if I could see these principles enough, I would be okay all the time. I wouldn't have different experiences. My life would be happy, wonderful. But more and more, it's not about the content of how we feel. And I know Sid pointed to that again and again. It's not in content. What we're thinking, how we're feeling, isn't where it's at. That's not what he was interested in. It was in that we have experience and that we can create content. And there, in that place, there's less judgment and less need for anything to be different. And one of the phrases at the moment which I've loved, is something that Ken Manning and Robin Charbit said, which we're built for reality. As human beings, we're built for reality, and reality is we're going to have all different kinds of experience. But knowing how reality is created moment to moment is a very different experience than when you just feel life's happening at you and you're a victim of circumstance or a victim of something. And I think that's what Jamie Smart would call Narnia, like living in a world where we think something other than thought can create a feeling for us. And we're not built for that. Like, it's scary to be there, but we are built for reality. And the reality is that moment to moment, we're in a thought created experience. And there's an intelligence behind all of life, which none of us will be able to know intellectually or we get a sense of it. We get a feel for it. And I don't know, I love that more and more that's what I'm interested in. Because before I kind of saw the principles as a way of having a nicer experience. Because it definitely takes stuff off our mind. When we've got one place to look to where our feeling comes from, we stop spending time in, is it because of this happened when I was younger? Is it because of this? Is it because of circumstances? Yes, we have less on our mind, but the ultimate goal of learning these principles, I see now, is more, there is no outcome or goal for it. It's just a truth about how life works, and we get to point that out to people and to ourselves again and again and again. It's not a therapy or approach or a coaching or a thing or a something. You know, these principles aren't things. They're not thoughts. They're spiritual powers. And it's weird to kind of try and get our head around that. Because in a way, anything going on in our head is to do with our personality, our thought-created personality, trying to understand what created it. It's an impossibility because we can't see it. And I've got a beautiful friend called Paul who said to me this year, we cannot see our own. It's like it hurt my head to kind of think about. But what he was pointing to, I think, is that through truly seeing the nature of these principles, the identity and the personality starts to dissolve. And I think what happened to Sid is that dissolved completely. And he said he experienced going through death and death of the ego. But once you're there, there's only oneness, so there's no one there to see it. And I'm like, part of us, we don't want to drop that. We want to have an identity. We want to be able to see it. So we live in a world where we think there is duality, and we think there is outside and inside, when ultimately there's just inside. The only experience we're ever living in is an internal one. Mm-hmm. And that's all that's ever happening for any of us. And I don't know, it's like this is the divine dream that Sid spoke about. I'm like, I'm kind of getting a sense of what you meant. And I can listen to the same tapes of his over and over again and hear something different. But I can also go for months and months without listening to anything. And just seeing that the learning comes from within us. If we listen to someone speaking about these principles and we hear something, that's from within us, because not everyone else in the room heard the same thing. And I think it's really important because it's so easy for us to put our well-being or our insight or our understanding on someone external. And it's never coming from there. Sid knew that if you're in the middle of the desert and you're ready to hear truth, you'd hear something. And I think the principles is the most beautiful, simple metaphor I've ever come across. But I'm also open to someone might see it simpler. I have no idea. So like my attachment to the form of this is fallen away. But still, for it.
That's so beautiful. Beautiful, Jane. And
put me there, Janet.
Well, I had things to do. You know what I mean? We are the principal. Just get on with it, woman. So, but what I loved and what I heard you say, and you saying about the oneness of things. I can't remember. I think I saw something in a group this week, and it was about we're not the ones who, just observes the thoughts and things happen to us. We are all of this. We are everything. We are the energy that is thought. We are the energy. We are that which is perceiving thought, the perceiver. We are the observer. We are the creator. We are all of this, all at the same time. And as you said, the principles, and in remembering the principles are metaphors to point towards the divine mind, as Sid would call it. And as you said, that early Sid stuff, when Sid was talking about Christ consciousness, it was all about the spiritual formless nature of what this is. It was only years later, in trying to put things together, to put it in a way in which to teach people, that these metaphors came about, these words came about. And he was also always very adamant, don't listen to my words. It's what's behind the words. And sometimes, and I know for myself, it's that shedding of not making the words, not making the principles into a thing, so that I'm holding on to that as something and judging people from that platform. And it's about letting go of that, recognizing that everything is energy, everything are these principles. And so when I let go of that, I can see, I can read Richard Bach and the illusions. I can look at quantum think. I can look at all of these different things and see truth, because as Sid said, this truth has been around since the beginning of time. It's nothing new. This is the realization that Sid had. And these are the words, this is how it showed up for him and how he was able to then share it with us, which, as you said, just always grateful. And I suppose with my journey in being in church, it was like when I heard these principles, it was like coming home. This was the bit that church forgot to me. It wasn't about, okay, you have to go through this, oh, my Christian friends are going to disown me now, but be saved in order to get to heaven, to get to a certain place. It's like, no, you are already this. And these words are just pointing you back towards what this is. And in knowing that, as you said, it's the freedom to create, to recognize that we're realizing these experiences moment by moment and experiencing them because of the senses that we have and the consciousness and awareness. And in seeing that, life can be more fun. Life can be more light. Life can also be far more serious, because there was something I read in Richard Bach Illusions today, and it said, and I'm just going to read it out, which had me pondering, and it said, argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. And I thought that was excellent, because we're perfect without limitation, and then we create them, and then we act according to these limitations, and then we forget that we created them. And then we have to do a breakthrough in order to get rid of them and go through some process or some procedure in order to break through them. And it's not that hard when you understand who and what you are. It's not that hard when you recognize that you are all of this. We are all of this. And I love when you said at the beginning, because I was listening, that the greatest relationship is the one that we have with ourselves, with our thoughts, with the one that we're creating, who and what we are, what we believe to be true, who we like and who we dislike. It's all us, and that it's us that determines then the relationships we have with others, by placing standards and conditions on them as well. So yeah, I'm not saying that I love everybody, far from it, people. I so get wrapped up in everything. I'm like, I love Jeff constantly. That's all I can say today. But but other than that, like I said, I'm no saint. I'm not saying, oh yeah, I'm just like an enlightened person. Oh no. And as you said about the duality, it's not the duality. I see the flow, the ebb and flow of, I'm taking this seriously. And there's sometimes I see it and there are others that I'm not. And it's not until my awareness changes again, I'm like, oh my gosh, did I really believe that in that moment? Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And I think where I am now, and I was saying about seeing, I think Keith Blevin said, until you get an understanding of this, or when you get an understanding of this, you'll see more and more miracles. And what I'm realizing is that we are miraculous. I now marvel at the stories that we make up and we believe to be true. I think it's fascinating when people come to me, oh, Jenna, I've got this problem and this is so bad. And in the past, I used to judge. I used to go, oh, well, the principles will deal with all of that. Yeah, I know where to take you. It's okay. But now, in being in that moment with that person, I think, oh my gosh, look how fascinating and amazing you are, that you made that story up and now you believe it to be true and you're carrying it with you. Oh my gosh, what phenomenal beings we are, that we are able to do that. And I marvel at how amazing and miraculous we are. So I see more and more in the day-to-day the miracle that we are because of what we do, how we think, how we create. It's just fascinating. Fascinating.
When you were talking, I was just thinking the word compelling kept coming up. How compelling our stories are. And we made them up, so we believe them. And it's the nature of these principles that it brings it to life as if it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Have these creations, and it's in their nature they look true to us.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of hear in what you're saying is you're just kind of less and less interested or compelled with your stories. But I love that you can still do it. And like there's times I'm doing it, like I was getting really stressed before because I thought I was going to be late, and I'm in it and I'm frustrated, but at the same time I'm like, wow, I can really still do this, and it's becoming life and death that I make this webinar on time, and I can see that I'm doing it and I'm still doing it. And it's just, I don't know, the title of the Three Principles North group that my sister came up with was Who Cares? We went there, Dave and my sister did on Monday, because I spent such a huge portion of my life caring so much about what other people thought about my stories, and I was attached to those stories because they were who I was, and I needed people to know my stories because then it validated them, or some people would say they weren't true and that would feel nice, and more and more it's like, who cares? Who cares of this stuff that runs through our mind? But the beauty of it is I feel like we get to care more for life and people because we're less caught up in ourselves. And I saw so much of my suffering came from a really innocent self-obsession. How am I doing? How am I feeling? How's my relationships? How's my parents? But it was always about how I was doing, how I was being viewed, what I was showing up as. And it sounds kind of similar to what you're saying, Dan, is you get less and less interested in your own, less and less interested in your creations, and more in awe of the fact that we can create. Like, wow, I can really do stress. Wow, I can really do anxiety still. And I think that is where the magic comes in. She's like, wow, we get to bring to life experience, whether or not it's got anything to do with reality in terms of the stories I can make up, but we can bring them to life and live out of them as if they're true. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I can see your face when you're talking, like you're just in awe of.
And it's interesting when you said that I don't care about my own story as much, which about me and what I'm making up, and the fascination with others, which also it's about the connection. And when I'm saying it's a connection with others, it's also the connection with myself. That in NLP days you say like establishing rapport and mirroring people and this, that, and the other. Where it's far more simple. I'm just in the moment and just think, oh my gosh, you're just an amazing, fascinating being, and you're a reflection of me. And I feel that, and you say then there's a deeper compassion and a deeper caring. Even for myself, when I go beyond okay, then if I point you back towards the principles or what the principles are trying to point you towards, because even that used to get in the way of me connecting, in me just being. Not even thinking, okay, I'm making up my... None of that. In just being, the compassion, the love, the marvel, the awe that I have for what we are. It far surpasses the metaphors that we use. And it points back to what Sid was saying. Don't listen to my words.
It feels like you're suddenly on automatic again. Like, I think when I initially learned this, I kept having like, oh, this is thought created experience, and like there's quite a lot of commentary, and there's quite a lot of needing to talk to other people to remind myself, and it feels like it's become more and more automatic. You get to live on automatic. You're not thinking about these principles in everyday life. You're just living and having an experience, And one of the things I saw beautifully just recently is getting to work with two different groups of people and realising that I still had the idea that certain things in life are worthy of suffering, and certain things in life are trivial and they're not worth suffering. And then I was working with two different groups of people. One group seemed to have very extreme stories and circumstance, and the other group seemed more or less extreme, quite trivial. But the people with the ones that I thought were trivial were having extreme anxiety and stress, and some of them medicated. And then this other group who I saw as like, oh my goodness, how do you get up in the mornings? Were just like vibrant and laughing and talking about it in quite a neutral way. And I saw my own judgment. Like, I've got ideas of when it's necessary to suffer, whether we're worthy of suffering, whether that circumstance is hard enough to suffer. And I just saw my own judgment in my face. Like, oh, there's certain things I think, oh, come on, you're being so ridiculous. But what I really saw is suffering is suffering. And suffering is an internal world that we live in by a thought. And as I've been teaching and learning about for the last 11 years, it's non-dependent on circumstance or the past. And it was such a like slaphead moment of like, oh my goodness, I hadn't seen that before. Because there are certain things that I think people could talk to me about where I think, no, this deserves, I can see why you're suffering. This is so bad. And then the judgment of, that's quite trivial. Come on, you just need to see these principles and it's just thought. And just seeing how we can do that. So for me, it was a brilliant learning, and it was another reminder that there is only that one world happening for all of us. It's that internal thought-generated experience, and whatever we create looks true and real. So our suffering will feel as terrible as we're thinking. And it was just, so that was humbling, and kind of, seeing my own judgments, seeing my own limitations, seeing my own made-up ideas about this stuff has been fantastic.
Nice. So everybody any comments or questions? You want to unmute yourself to say something or put a question in the chat, because this is called conversations, not just me and Jen. Oh, hey, okay, Crystal, I'll unmute you. Okay.
Hello, hi. I thought I had to unmute myself, Janet, but you do it, do you?
Oh, I control things, sweetie. I am the mistress controller of it. Yeah.
Oh, well, I just love what we're talking about relationships. Unfortunately, I've broken up with my partner after 6 years, but he suffers from mental health. And it's just very difficult. I find myself always going back to him. And now I realise it's just through the power of thought that you can go back to someone or something, but you can have a completely different experience to the first time or the second time, the third time that you had it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But also, like, if we could change our thinking and we were in control of our thought process of what we think when we think it, then we wouldn't do the mistakes or the other things that we keep going back to that are no good for us again and again and again. But because we're not in control of our own thinking, and we can't actually say what we're going to think in each moment, that makes it harder. Does that make sense?
I can hear what you're saying, and it's true. And you're saying we don't control the thoughts that come, but the experience we have is different, as you said. And so and so, whether it's hard or not, that's your determination. It's an experience. You then put the descriptors around it, whether it's going to be hard, whether it's difficult, whether it's a suffering. And that's because sometimes we don't realize that that's us adding the flavor, that's us adding the spice to that experience, to that thinking.
Yeah, and also Janet, like, is when you say add spice, are you meaning overthinking the problem that's happening, so therefore it's going to make it more severe, more worse than it actually we're thinking about it in the moment? If we think more about it, it creates more of it, and it seems to stick around longer, the experience that you're having, because you are constantly going over it and analysing it and dissecting it in your mind. Is that what you mean?
That's your special sauce that you're adding to it right there.
Cool.
It's cool, 'cause it sounds like you're starting to see that we kind of think that the more we think about a problem, we're going to solve it. So we think about it and we think about it and we think about it and we talk about it. But it seems like you're starting to realise that that's just giving it more attention. And it starts to become less and less logical to do that to us. So it's something about learning these principles. We start to see that we're not going to solve our problems by thinking about them all the time. And there is a place for thinking about things. It's not, there's no kind of to do with this. But I used to spend a lot of time with different counsellors and healers, talking about my problems and talking about my eating disorders and trying to work out why I was how I was. And I didn't realise that I seemed to get worse as I got older. I seemed to get more and more shy. So at primary school, I was joining in plays and musicals. By secondary school, I didn't really want to do that anymore. But it seemed by focusing on what I thought was wrong with me, I seemed to get more of that. And the principles are kind of pointing to, well, there's nothing wrong with us. We're always experiencing the thought-created feeling, and we're going to have all different kinds of experience. So we're less kind of interested in what that experience is and more interested in the fact that that's being created. And it sounds like you're getting a feel for that, especially as you can notice that you can go back to the same person and view them with new eyes.
Yeah, exactly. I said that to Dave, Jen, as well. I was talking to Dave about it, and actually every thought that we have about anything in our lives can be completely seen again through new eyes, like we're born again. Every day we're born anew, and that's what I see now. Coming to the group and stuff. Just completely, whatever I think about, whatever comes into my mind, it's okay. There's nothing right or wrong about anything in anyone. You're right, we're not broken, we're not damaged, we're not ill, none of us. The core of us is well-being. In every single human being on this planet, we are all well-being.
Fabulous. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you so much for that. Love that.
You're welcome, Janet. I'm still listening. You can mute me now if you want.
So, any other comments or any other questions that we have? Does anybody want to say anything?
Got 6 people that look identical on this call.
See, I was wondering how long I could stay quiet before anybody broke the silence. Jen, I didn't think it was going to be you. I really didn't. So disappointed. I know, right, Jeff? Right. Jeff was shaking his head like, I'm so disappointed too. Yeah.
You need to spice it up a bit and surprise people.
What? No, I'm not going to pick on people. That's not nice, Jen. It's not nice. I'm judging that. Does anybody want to say anything? Unless I do start picking on people and be like Jen. I'm not saying whether that's good or bad. Just saying. Okay. I'm going to accept that you're a reflection of me, and right now that part of me wants to be quiet and listen. It's what to do when you want someone. Really, it's okay. I'm judging the question. Okay, Yitzi said, what do you do when you want someone to change? And he smiles. that a private question? I don't know whether he's being funny because he's got a smiley face there. I know.
I was thinking when you read it, I'm like, what do you do when you want someone to change? Well, you want them to change, so that's how you feel. What do you do with that is what you do next, what thought comes next. Yeah. But I love the principles because it's a constant, like, this is not about anyone else, this is about us. And I think Crystal pointed out that actually she views people differently when she goes back different times, depending on how we think. So I'm wondering if it was like a tongue-in-cheek question.
It may well be, but if it isn't, I'll apologise. Sorry.
I know how when I came across the principles, I had so many people in mind that needed these principles. If they could just see them, if they could just change, then my life would be so much better. And it was really cool to just realise that the more I learnt it for myself, other people look different to me regardless of if anything in them had changed. So it feels like if we want someone to change, it's looking within ourselves, because people look different to me. And now I'm unaware within my family whether someone has changed or whether I'm just seeing them differently. It doesn't matter. But I also found that I stopped trying to change people, stopped wanting them to be different so I could feel okay. And then you get to have different relationship with them anyway, because if you can feel if someone wants you to be different, you can feel if someone wants you to change. And I know for myself, if someone's trying to change me, I resist it. I'm like, yeah, back off. But I love, like, with the principles, it feels like there's always one answer to every single question, and that's thought creates feeling, and that's an internal world that we're living in. So the world changes as we change. So it's never about anyone else. Every relationship we're ever living in is one that's within us. So you kind of stop needing the world to look different and realise it's an internal thing.
Now it's wonderful when you say that, because it reminded me of, I had a conversation with an ex-client late last week, and she was a counsellor by trade, and she goes, and she came to me with doubting herself and issues, and she just didn't understand herself. And when I met with her last week, she was saying, "Oh, Janet, I've got a framework. I think I'm going to be successful now." And I went, "What's your framework?" And she goes, "Well, the principles underpins it all, because that's what you show me. It's about understanding that we all have separate realities." She goes, "Yeah, but then I do a bit of solution-focused work, and I do some passion work, and I do this work." Now, in the past, I'd be like, no. You don't need any of that. You just need to have a deeper grounding and understanding of the principles. But when I stepped back and again just marveled and thought, oh my goodness, this was a person that in the past would have looked for validation in everything that she said. She would have said, is that right? Is that okay? But now she's created something for herself that she truly believes will help her and other people. Now I saw that as the principles in motion. I thought that was fascinating. And I kind of went, wow. So this was me. It's like, look at me. I'm not judging. I'm so good. But it was releasing that I had to say, oh my gosh, okay, stop that. That's all wrong. You need to do this. And it was that freedom that you started off by saying earlier, Jenny. It was like, oh my gosh, it's like, she's amazing because she's created this for herself, and it's all the principles, and it's all okay. And just because it doesn't sound like the way I think it should sound, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect for where she is right now. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. So, yeah, I love that.
I had a friend who asked me to do, it was a neighbour who asked me to do some photos for her. And she was kind of asking what I do, because I think she was aware that I worked from home a lot. And I talked to her briefly, and she goes, oh, that sounds really interesting. And she said, well, I had 6 sessions of cognitive behavioural therapy 2 years ago. And she said an eating disorder that I'd had for 33 years disappeared. And I just thought, I've had so much thinking about the principles. They're so good. They're kind of better than everything else. And just that judgment. And I remember just standing there thinking, you've suffered your own thinking for 33 years, and there's something that's come along which has shifted that for you. Your thinking has changed while you're doing cognitive behavioural therapy. And it was like, where you see your own judgment, and you're like, there is there's just a place for everything in life, and people hear when they hear, their thinking changes when it changes. And to be able to have a much looser, kind of freer feel for this, it frees us up. And I feel like again and again and again I'm drawn back to the simplicity of the principles. But my judgment and my ideas about other ways or other things. And again, my good friend Paul, it makes me laugh because his phrase is, if you've got a stone in your shoe, take it out. And it was almost like, if you want to get on an aeroplane and you can't because you're scared, then maybe there'll be a technique that will get you on the plane. So it's not pointing fundamentally to the creation behind all of life, but in that moment it gets you on an aeroplane. And I always think, oh no. The principles is everything, and it is everything. But it feels nice to have lost the grip on it.
Yes.
And to relax about what it means to understand the principles, because we can't understand what they're pointing to.
No.
Because we think that we're here to understand something. Immediately we create that feeling of separation. And when I was saying earlier that I feel like the principles have become more automatic, I feel much more probably like a child is, in terms of you go in and out of different experiences with less judgment. I come to realise that I'm getting more reactive sometimes, but it's like it's there and then it's gone. I never used to really do that. Crying more. Never used to really do crying. And that kind of started a couple of years ago when I was on stage with Dickon, and I decided to start doing it in front of 80 people. So now just in front of one person or a few people isn't so bad. But it's like that ultimate freedom. And I feel like at any point, if we start to feel restricted by what we think we understand, that's not the understanding, it's just our made up it is. It was just inviting us to look within ourselves and look within and share from there. And he didn't want loads of little Sids walking around talking like him. He wanted us to enliven, wake up and share from there. And in our own language, in our own way, but with this incredibly simple pointer that we can go back to again and again and again, to have a constant. And I think science loves it when they find a constant. Psychology has found a constant. But where we then share from and how we work with people, again, is just going to be in the moment. Like sometimes when I talk to people now, I do listen to them for maybe the whole hour, talking through what's been on their mind, what's happened to them in their life. There is no need to butt in or try and teach. Again, that's like, I had all these ideas about what it meant to share the principles, how it's supposed to look. And more it's like, I feel like it's just wanting everyone to be their individual essence. And that changes, like with these changeable moment to moment to moment beings. We're not fixed, nothing solid about us in that way. So I feel like there's a fluidity or a freedom. Like I was saying to my sister, like I had to like play around with different laughs. I used to be a silent laugher. I just did that. And now I'm finding myself doing these ridiculous laughs in places I've never done it before, in front of people I never would have done. So it feels that the sense of yourself becomes less and less, and then there's a freedom there. Life showing up in all kinds of ways. Sometimes slightly crazy, sometimes really peaceful, sometimes loud, sometimes quiet, sometimes shy, sometimes annoyed. It's been really nice for that to be allowed and okay and free. Not afraid of feeling anything in the same way. I still said I don't like the feeling of stress and I don't like the feeling of jealousy. I think they're two feelings that I really still wish would piss off, but I kind of still allow them to happen. I allow ones that were like, oh, if I could just see something around that would be awesome.
Oh, Jen, thank you so much. And you know what? It's coming towards the end of the hour now. And what you said, Jen, has just been so wonderful. And I love speaking with Jen, because we could probably come off here, because I've said that the webinar is going to be an hour, and then we'll continue talking for another half an hour afterwards. But we're going to create other opportunities so that we can speak and you can be part of that conversation as well on different platforms. But what I'd like to ask first of all, Jen, is what are you up to now, or what initiatives do you have going on at the moment that you'd like to share right now?
I'm doing a course via donation in September with my dad, Peter Anderson, in Essex. So I can see a lot of people in here are actually really far from there. But we might live stream it, so we'll keep you posted on that. And I think that's the 16th and 17th.
Of what?
September. Got the retreat coming up with Joe Bailey in October as part of Innate Wellbeing, the company I have with Rudy. So we'll be doing that together with Joe. I think that's mid-October, terrible with dates. And just wanting to do more and more of these, like just having conversations with people and doing webinars. Like it's a strange experience because I feel like my office is floating. Like I haven't got any fixed location with any of it. But it's nice. It's nice still doing the retreats. 3 of those a year, and like me and Rude are really redefining our relationship and finding how to move forward, which has been really nice, and developing friendship and realising that love doesn't go anywhere, it changes. So I'm really looking forward to us doing that in October and just seeing how it all goes. Nice.
Wonderful. So Jen, on that note, and if people wanted to get in contact with you, where could they contact you?
So either through Facebook, or my email address is jennykennard@gmail.com.
Brilliant. Okay, Jenny, I'm just going to say thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's been wonderful, as always, just hanging out with you. And just thank you all as well for being here as part of this conversation. I have judgment about people not speaking, but that's my stuff. I will deal with it. Or not. But thank you for showing up. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here and listening. And I'll share it in the group, and you can share these recordings as well. Next week, I have my wonderful friend and colleague, Juanita Jake Sinclair, and we're going to be talking about the essence of business. She's just been doing some amazing work. Her business is just the way in which she sees business now has kind of turned on its head, where we were looking at love as currency as opposed to money. So that would be really interesting next week. So once again, Jen, thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
People can make the one next week. I heard Juanita speak at the women's conference earlier on in the year, and she is an incredible speaker, incredibly inspirational woman, and I'd recommend her to everyone.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thanks, Jen, and I'll see all of you next week, same time next Wednesday. Take care, everybody. Love you. Bye.